Hey everyone, wherever you are, I hope you're having a wonderful week so far. We're here with the latest episode of the Inside Crypto Show, interviews and discussions with regular people like yourselves. Today we are joined by Pranjal Prashar. He's the founder of Paxo Finance. Paxo is an instant and permissionless, under-collateralized DeFi lending protocol. That might sound a little complicated, but don't worry, we're going to unpack that later, so stay tuned. Before we get started, I have to do the usual disclaimer. Anything said by either Pranjal or myself does not constitute financial advice. Our opinions are our own and are not to be connected with our respective organizations. Please, everyone, do your own research. Because we just have Pranjal on the show today, we can spend a bit more time talking about his background before we dive into the crypto. Pranjal, thanks so much for coming today and taking time during your lunchtime. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be part of this show. So I have been into tech entrepreneurship for almost 10 years. I have built a hardware company, sold it to Kodakalaris back in 2015, started a SaaS venture, recently got an option to exit that venture as well. And since 2017, I have been engaged into Web3 or crypto ecosystems in various capacities, sometimes as an investor, sometimes as an advisor. And while exiting the SaaS business, I realized that my next venture would be something in Web3. We were experimenting with a small hedge fund, and that's when we realized that most of the lending protocols are over collateralized, and we found a gap. And we realized that, hey, if we are facing this issue, then I'm sure there are a lot of people across the globe facing similar issues. Then we decided to take a deeper look into the space and decided to start Paxo Finance. So that has been our journey so far. So by education, I hold a bachelor's in engineering and master's in business administration. So I'm supposed to be a good product guy.
Nice. Going back to what you said, right? You said in 2017 you jumped into Web3. What was that specific memory that sort of pushed you from the traditional world into the Web3 world? Was it like a friend or something you read online or something your dad said? Like, how did that happen?
So one of our developers introduced me to Bitcoin as a currency, though I've been reading about it. But my first transaction, when I think BTC was trading at less than $1,000 per coin, and that was done by one of a very young member in our development team when I was working in my startup, and he spent good amount of time explaining why this is going to be a viable currency in future. Then within the group, we started talking about it, and then we realized that, hey, this is something way bigger than all of us have been seeing. So this requires our serious attention. So we started doing some trading, some investment. We also experimented with small mining setup. We did some arbitrage. We started investing in some of the ICOs, and that's how we got involved in the entire ecosystem.
Nice. You mentioned mining, right? How's mining work in India? It is pretty hot, just like in Taiwan. I mine here in Taiwan, and the hot weather is pretty terrible when it comes for mining rigs. Is mining very popular in India?
So the biggest challenge with mining in India is availability of hardware. The part of world where you are, I believe that's not a problem. India is a large country, and in certain states, the weather is really conducive. If you go to some states like Himachal Pradesh and all, weather is really cold, and that is really good for mining. But availability of hardware is the biggest challenge. So we did experiment with available resources in this market. We also did some import from Chinese markets, and experimented with a small mining farm. But that was more from the entrepreneur inside us. Always drives us to certain areas where we feel like, hey, we should do it ourselves. We should really experiment it. It's not from the commercial side, but it's the fun of doing something on own and mining a couple of Ethereum, couple of Monero. So that was the thought process at that point of time.
Nice. That was the same for me. You said 2017. 2017 was the same time I got into mining Ethereum here in Taiwan. Same thing. I was like, okay, I like technology. I like hardware. I used to build computers when I was a kid. Oh, let me just put everything together, try my first, not big size commercial miner, but just build my own miner. And it worked. Yeah. So just like you said, try something. It's the only way you can learn.
I think that's the best way to learn. When you try something firsthand, even if you lose some amount, that's perfectly fine. That learning is pretty much fast and it remains with you for a longer time.
Exactly. So, Pranjal, I appreciate your introduction, and I always love learning how people get into crypto. We have a lot of young people when I look at our podcast stats who do listen to this show, and I think it's learning how people get into the space is very important to inspire people. So we're here to talk about crypto and also about what you're doing, Paxo, which is really interesting. As I mentioned at the beginning, permissionless DeFi lending protocol. To people who are very new, that may sound complicated. Like anyone can go to Paxo Finance's website, they can say, okay, this is what it is. But I think whenever founders talk about their company and what they're trying to do, it always sounds much better than just reading some text on a website. Tell us about Paxo, tell us what it does, tell us your vision for it. There's a lot on the website. Give us your take.
Sure. If we look at DeFi as a space, we see some good success, right? We have seen growth and rise of companies like Aave, Compound, Pinktree, and so on and so forth. So in a way, what is happening is in from traditional finance world, similar products are being replicated in a permissionless and trustless manner, right? So Aave or Compound, these are equivalent to gold loan in traditional finance world, right? Where you put any asset as collateral and then 60-70% value of the asset you can take as loan. And then users can withdraw it and then they can use it wherever they want. And this model is pretty successful. We have seen TVL value locked in billions, right? So while working with our small hedge fund, we realized that there is nothing compared to a home loan or a mortgage or a car loan model where the entire loan is not over collateralized, it's under collateralized. So that means what happens when we buy a home? We put 20% or 10%, remaining 80% comes from the bank. And for the combined 100% of the amount, we buy a house or we buy a car or we buy a shop or a commercial property. And that commercial property or home, that becomes the collateral. You can use it as long as you want, but you need to pay the debt to take full custody of the house. So that's the whole thought process behind under collateralized loan. We believe that over collateralized is good, but to leverage over collateralized, you need to have substantial capital. It's meant for people who hold larger value in their wallet. What about millions of new users or millions of users where the holding is less than $5,000? Imagine there are more than 100 million wallets today holding less than $5,000 in their wallet. They are not able to use DeFi because they don't have collateral which can give them higher leverage. Even if they do that, the amount will be less. So we realized that, hey, why don't we create something equivalent to home loan model, truly trustless and permissionless manner, and so that people can use that, put their 10-20%, maybe people can put $500 and take loan of $2,500 instead of putting $500 in collateral and taking just $300 or $400 as loan. So that's the thought process and product.
Pranjal, have you launched yet? Like, how many people are using it, or are you still building up towards the big marketing launch?
So we are going live hopefully this month if we do not face any major hurdle. We are currently on testnet, Polygon testnet. It's available on our website. People can connect their MetaMask and use the protocol. We have around 20,000 users on testnet so far, but mainnet alpha launch should happen sometime end of this month.
Nice. Congratulations. You're launching this month. That's awesome.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to ask as well, like you mentioned the home loan thing, and that, I think that is something I didn't even think about looking at your website. And I think that's a very good point because a lot of the people here in Taiwan that I know, and not even in Taiwan, friends of mine when I used to go to college in the USA, I used to live in Ireland as well. They've got money in crypto, but not a huge amount of money. But that's beside the point. Do you see Paxo as being a replacement for a home loan? Could you, as someone like anybody someone living in Delhi and say, hey, I can't get a loan from a bank, but I can use Paxo Finance to put my crypto in, put my 20% down, as you mentioned, get my 80% back, and finally buy a house in India? Because like buying a house in Taiwan it's crazy. It's expensive. It's very hard to get a mortgage. You have to pass a lot of rules. Do you see Paxo as being another method for people to purchase a house?
So eventually we should be able to reach there. It's just that the entire tech infrastructure to enable a physical goods purchase today, it's not there, right? Because we are moving with a permissionless and trustless mindset. With the loan protocol today, you can buy a Bitcoin in the similar model today. You can buy an Ethereum or any fungible token. But we are also in discussion with a couple of companies in US where we will be enabling fractional ownership of a guest house or an Airbnb villa using the same loan model. But eventually, my belief is maybe not today, maybe in a couple of years, once the infrastructure, once the liquidation price oracles and decentralized places to sell these homes, those infrastructure layers are there, the protocol can enable those type of purchases as well. Today, given the limitation we have, we are able to buy in the same model any fungible token. So it can be Bitcoin, Ethereum. You can put your $500 and buy one.
Nice. Starting off with a limited use case, but once you guys get the ball rolling, you expand in very broad fashion to do a lot of different things. I mean, you're just limited by what the technology offers in the future.
Absolutely, that's correct. Given the limitation we have, whatever we can enable in the first phase, we are going live with fungible tokens. The next target will be non-fungible ones. And as a part of that, we are already talking to real estate companies who are offering fractional ownership of a villa or a commercial property. That will be probably the second or third milestone for us. Once we reach there, then the next stage will be to figure out how we can bring in more physical world assets and leverage our protocol to offer loans for them.
Okay. You mentioned, you're talking to American companies at the moment. One of the things, you're not the first Indian guest I've had on, and we've talked about the RBI, we've talked about the current state of the government in India and regulations when it comes to crypto. Do you see yourself, Paxo, at least in the beginning, of focusing more outside India until crypto regulation in India stabilizes and then you can do more business, or it doesn't really matter where it is? What's your thought about regulation?
So I think government also is very clear that they are not against blockchain, but they are against pump and dump and get rich quick schemes. So as long as we are building a fundamental layer of technology which will open doors, which will enable new people to access finance, I think that's not a problem even today. But when it comes to launching tokens, taking it to a different number and then selling it, people have perception, or a lot of traders also, they believe that crypto is all about buying at a lower cost, selling it at a higher price, and then you can make quick money. I think that's where the government is also not aligned. But anything which uses any tech venture using blockchain technology to create and solve real world problems, I think that's not a larger challenge. But yeah, launching a token in India will take some time before government comes up with the right tools when it comes to launching something based out of India. And because of that, a lot of entrepreneurs are doing it from other geographies. Dubai is like one of the key markets where most of the Indian entrepreneurs are moving to. Singapore, where regulation is slightly sorted and government is more aware about what is happening in the space. But yeah, it might take some time. But yeah, any blockchain-based initiative that's still doable is from this market. Token is a different discussion altogether.
Makes sense. One of the things I wanted to touch on is, again, this is just looking at you when I was preparing for the show. I saw one of the really cool pieces of text on your website is bigger loans for less. Again, talking about under collateralization. We've seen this in the last 1 year when it comes to crypto, is the worry about default. We talked about Solend on Solana. There was that big whale, and there was an issue of him crashing the protocol. How do you guys handle this sort of the dangers of default? Because it's not just your protocol as well. It's all the users invested. It's maybe at that point in time, you're tied into a bunch of other protocols. How do you keep safe at Paxo Finance?
So by design, so what happens in case of a home loan when your value of property goes down? Bank says that, hey, you pay more, reduce the debt, or they will put the house for auction. They will sell it off to recover their cost. Same way, we also have the mechanism where if market crashes or in case of any black swan event, users will have an option to increase their own contribution in the loan, right, and safeguard the overall collateral. Or if they're not able to do it, then the part of that asset will be liquidated so that the value becomes the borrowed amount that becomes under the value of collateral. And it's fully automated, it's fully transparent and smart contract based. So from lender side, their money is always secure. If a user defaults, if market crashes, in that case, just like Compound or Aave, the asset will be liquidated immediately, not fully, but a part of that asset will be liquidated so that they are not under the water. And a part of our code which does this liquidation, that is derived from Compound. It's well time tested. Compound has seen a couple of black swan events, so it works efficiently.
Nice, that makes sense. One of the things I noticed as well, like you said, permissionless, and we've talked about that. And again, this is a change moving into this year. We've seen a lot of places where originally KYC was not required, but now everyone's moving to KYC as as not just India, not just Taiwan, pretty much every country where crypto exists, some sort of KYC is required. You're permissionless at the moment. Do you see Paxo moving to a permissioned environment where users have to provide you with ID or password numbers or some sort of thing in order to use the protocol?
So I believe there is no middle way. Either you remain a trustless, permissionless protocol, or you go the opposite side of it where you do all KYC and you work with all the right regulators and follow the right procedure. So we believe that with time, if need be, because in certain states, certain countries, we might not be able to offer our services because of the government regulation. But if need be, probably we'll go with a different version of the protocol which will be compliant, and we will ensure that in all these countries we are following all the mandates related to KYC. We can also consider another step where even the custody of purchase asset that can be given to a more secure or a listed or a third party where the asset is more secure. So we can go either a fully centralized type of business or we can go into the decentralized side of it. I think we'll start with decentralized side, and if we see enough demand, then we may consider getting into the centralized and KYC compliant manner.
Nice. And it's really cool that you're at that stage where you're very flexible. You can go one way or the other way, or maybe even both ways, as you said. So that's an exciting future for Paxo. One of the things I wanted to ask as well is, and again, in doing research for the show, watching old videos, is on your site you have a mention of a portfolio builder. And I know what that means in my mind, but I wanted to ask, like, how does that work? There are similar tools available out there on like Balancer and other places. What are you trying to do with your portfolio builder?
Okay, so imagine a scenario where over next few weeks or days or maybe months time, Bitcoin comes down to $14,000 or $15,000, right? What will be our immediate reaction? What will be your immediate reaction? We will try to buy, right? Because we believe that this asset class is going to be there for next decades, couple of decades. So we will buy as much as we can. What options you have? Imagine at that stage you put $10,000 and then you buy 3 or 4 or 5 Bitcoin, right? That's where our portfolio builder comes in place, where you want to accumulate something, you want to buy now and pay later. So there are two parts to it, portfolio builder. Well, first one is choosing an asset class, right? And I believe there are so many good protocols offering much better services. So probably that will not be our strength. That is something we will let people choose what they want to buy. But how they want to buy it with minimal capital, with the best efficient loan, that part we will solve in the first phase. Maybe we can tie up with a few industry experts and protocols where they suggest the right bucket to buy. But how efficiently you want to buy it by just putting, let's say, 10 or 20% of the value today, that part we will solve.
I like that idea. That's interesting as an option for people to get into crypto. On the bottom of your website, right, you show like comparisons compared to Venus and Aave and Compound, and that's what when it comes to interest rates, is like, how are you able to offer such competitive interest rates compared to some of these big competitors like Aave and Compound?
So I think for us, the right comparison with from interest rate perspective is with the margin loan protocols, right? Or centralized exchanges or centralized businesses offering under collateralized loan. And that interest rate is as high as 26%. Imagine if you trade on Binance or FTX or any of these exchanges where you take loan to do margin trade. That interest rate based on the hourly calculation, it comes out to be around 26%. But if you take a over collateralized loan on Aave or Compound, probably as low as 4 or 5%, or I think it's slightly lesser than that today. Look at the overall difference, right? On one side, just because it's under collateralized, people are paying 26%. On the other side, when it is over collateralized, the interest rate is as low as 4 or 5%. We want to come as someone who can offer similar interest rate, if not better than Aave or Compound, at least similar, and bring those audience who are currently paying 26% to the same 4 or 5%. Interest rate model is again, it's a marketplace model. So based on the overall utilization of the pool, it varies. If there is a lot of demand, if a lot of people are taking interest, it goes high, it goes up. Again, the interest rate model is fork of Compound. So whatever happens on Compound, the same way we are also calculating our interest.
You mentioned demand, and you mentioned you've already have quite a large number of people on your testnet. One of the things with new protocols is like, how do you scale? How do you get users? What's your plan for attracting more people? Like, how are you going to say, hey, there's this really cool product because it is cool. There's a lot of good things better than other places. How are you going to attract people to say, hey, come here, take advantage, or at least try it out, because we are offering some things better than other places?
Right. So we already have a small community of around 70,000 users. We have more than 20,000 users engaging with us on our testnet on monthly basis. We are part of Polygon ecosystem, and we are still in alpha, right? So the first version which will go live will be allowed only for a handful of users. Maybe first 1,000 or 10,000 users will be allowed to use it. For DeFi protocols, it's important to go small and then figure out the security part. Ensure that, hey, you have tried it, tested it, and made enough amendments from the security side where you have comfort that it can be open to a larger audience. Once we are ready with our alpha launch and we move forward for the next version, we will open up audiences across the globe wherever legalities permit. And at that point of time, we do have plans to engage with the right set of opinion leaders, KOLs, partners in different markets. We are also doing localization. So the community will continue to add more people, will create regional communities. And at the same time, we will localize the product use cases, will engage with the right audience and KOLs in all these markets to create awareness within the crypto community.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that. I was reading an article on the Bitcoinist, right? They mentioned the whole idea of risk management, and this was about Paxo, of course. And they mentioned the walled garden, and when it comes to risk management. And I wanted you to explain to some of our listeners and some of our viewers, like, what is the walled garden and risk management perspective?
Sure. Let's look at how we can achieve under-collateralization, right? Today, if you want to buy an asset worth $100 and you just want to pay $20, $80 needs to come from some other side, right? So there are two different approaches to solve this. The first one is the way traditional banks work. They check your credit rating, right? They go with very detailed analysis of your historical data, your financials, and based on that, bank takes that risk. So it's a credit score based approach. In that case, somebody has to assume that risk of 80%. In most of the traditional cases, it's banks. Same can be replicated in DeFi as well, but somebody again has to assume the risk of the 80% part, borrowed amount. It can be a DAO, it can be another lender, one-on-one, or it can be a pool. What we are using is a different approach. It's a walled guarded setup where for lenders, it's always over-collateralized. It's equivalent to a gold loan or a over-collateralized model. But for borrowers, it looks like it's an under-collateralized because the contribution 20% and whatever 80% is coming, that is being locked within the protocol. So what it means is, if you want to withdraw your purchased 1 ETH or 2 ETH outside Paxo, you need to clear the debt. It remains within the walls of the protocol. You can use it within the Paxo setup. If you want to stake it somewhere, if you want to put it in any of the yield optimization protocols, whatever is whitelisted within Paxo, you can use it. But if you want to take it to a different wallet outside the walls of Paxo, then you need to pay off the debt. So that's our approach.
Okay, cool. One of the cool things as well people will see on your site is you guys have, or you're going to launch your own token at some point in the future, right? Because it hasn't launched just yet.
Correct. So I think the first phase, we will just launch the protocol. We'll allow people to use the protocol, but at the right time, we will go ahead with our token launch as well.
And your token, what is the purpose? Is it a typical governance token? What are you trying to achieve with your token?
Yeah, it's going to be a governance token, what all tokens or coins to be listed, interest rate, lending pools, limit, interest rate model, margin for the protocol, or even with the margin we make from the buy, lending, and borrowing, what to do with that money. All these decisions will be done and governed through the token.
Nice.
Eventually, we'll move into a DAO where all these decisions will be decentralized.
Just read my mind as you spoke the last minute. I was like, are you going to do a DAO? Okay. So you are going to move towards the DAO.
Yes. Once we are live with the protocol, once we see slightly established TVL will immediately move into DAO model.
Okay, nice. So at the moment, right, hopefully, fingers crossed, end of September, you launch your first version. Like you said, a 1,000 users or 2,000 users, some selected people to start, and maybe expanding after that. Then maybe 2023, maybe Q2 token launch, perhaps.
Hopefully, if market conditions are right and if other things are sorted out, we'll go ahead with the token launch.
Nice.
But yeah, product will be available much sooner and will allow people to leverage the overall technology what we are building. The token will come whenever market and we are ready.
Cool. Pranjal, so we're getting towards the end of today's show. And one of the last questions, or maybe two questions I wanted to ask is, we've talked about what's coming, right? And you've talked about some exciting things. Actually, you've technically answered this question already with the fractionalized NFTs, fractionalized ownership of things when it comes to Paxo and other potential partnerships. Like, for people who are listening to this, what should they be excited about when it comes to Paxo Finance for 2023? Is there anything you want to talk about? And the other part of the question is, as I told you before, is like final words of wisdom or something you want to say to people to round off today's show.
So I think I will answer the second part first. So never invest in a company or token without trying their product. So anybody who is interested in this space, they should use the product. Whether it is a DeFi or a gaming or a metaverse, use the product first. Connect your wallet, spend some tokens on gas fee. Perfectly fine. If you really love the company, if you really love the product, then you should think about it. Coming back to Paxo and our roadmap ahead, I really would like to invite everyone to be part of our alpha launch. We are announcing it today on our website, and we would really love to have people from different parts of the world participating in it, giving us real candid feedback. Though we received 6,000 feedback in our testnet launch, but once we go live in the alpha, I would really like to invite DeFi enthusiasts to be part of our ecosystem.
Nice. And I'd love people to encourage it, because on this show, I always tell people I love to explore new things and new protocols, and everyone is doing something very unique, very special, very awesome in crypto. And like, when I first got your email, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Then as I'm reading through your website, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So I'm glad you could make time for us today. Pranjal, I've already got Paxo's socials and Telegram. I'll put that in the show notes for the YouTube video, for the podcast as well. Are you okay with people following you on Twitter? Would you like to share your Twitter account?
Absolutely. I'm available on Twitter, Telegram. I'm available with the handle Pranjal Prashar. You can search it on Telegram. Happy to engage with the audience. Happy to answer questions if there are any.
Cool. So then that's awesome. So sometimes in crypto as well, some people are very private. I always encourage people, I'm like, especially if you're a founder, you should be accessible to people, because that's how people get to know you and feel comfortable in crypto. And I appreciate you for being one of the few people who are publicly available. And so I'll include your socials, I include Paxo's socials as well. I appreciate it. And then this episode will be up in 2 days on Friday. So if you're listening to this, it's probably a Friday or a Saturday, Taiwanese time or Indian time. And definitely check out Paxo, check out Amun as well, because that's who I work for. And thank you again, Pranjal, for coming on the show. And hopefully we can get you on next year. Once the token launch happens, you can say, oh my God, things are going so well. I can stop working. I'm retiring already. I've made enough money.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really look forward to this show. Once it is live, I'll share it with all our audience and in the community.
Thank you, Pranjal. And everyone, make sure you follow Paxo, follow Pranjal, and let us know what you thought about this episode. I can pass on any feedback to him as well, or you can just contact him yourself. And we will see you guys next week, Friday, for another interview.
Thank you.